The rain fell in sheets, blurring the Seattle skyline as Emma Larson stood frozen on her apartment balcony, clutching a crumpled letter. Her family's words echoed in her mind. "We're proud of you, Emma. It takes courage to live your truth." But the letter in her hand, delivered by her ex-husband, no less revealed a betrayal so sharp it cut deeper than any lie she'd ever told herself to survive her marriage. Emma was 32, a graphic designer with a quiet strength that hid years of wrestling with her identity. She'd grown up in a small town outside Tacoma, where church pews and family dinners shaped her world. Her parents, devout and traditional, had raised her to be the perfect daughter. Obedient, feminine, destined for a life with a husband and kids. She tried. God, had she tried. At 25, she married Daniel, a charismatic real estate agent who promised her stability. But the vows felt like chains, and every night in their shared bed, Emma lay awake, her heart screaming for something she couldn't name. It wasn't until she met Lila at a design conference 2 years ago that the truth unraveled. Lila, 28, was a freelance photographer with an infectious laugh and eyes that seemed to see straight through Emma's carefully built walls. They'd collided over coffee, their conversation sparking something electric. Lila was unapologetically herself, out, proud and free in a way Emma envied. That night, as they talked until dawn in a dimly lit bar, Emma felt her world shift. For the first time, she let herself imagine loving someone who wasn't a man. Now, standing on her balcony, the letter trembled in her hands. Her family had called her brave when she came out 6 months ago, their hugs warm, their tears convincing. But the letter, written in her mother's careful cursive, detailed every secret Emma had shared. Her love for Lila, her plans to leave Daniel, her fears of losing everything. Sold to Daniel $4,700, a price tag on her truth. The betrayal burned, but what terrified her more was the note's final line. "Daniel's coming for you, Emma. He knows where you are." She crumpled the letter and shoved it into her pocket, her breath hitching. Seattle's lights flickered through the rain, a city that had become her refuge since she'd left Tacoma. She'd moved here to start over, to build a life with Lila, who lived just a few blocks away in a cozy studio filled with camera equipment and half-finished poetry. But now Daniel was closing in, armed with her secrets and a rage she knew too well. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "You okay? Saw you on the balcony. Come over?" Her heart softened at the thought of Lila's warmth, but fear gnawed at her. Daniel wasn't just her past. He was a storm that could destroy everything she'd fought for. She typed back, "Be there soon," and grabbed her coat, determined to protect what she'd found with Lila, no matter the cost. The walk to Lila's apartment was a blur of wet streets and neon signs. Emma's mind raced, replaying the moment she'd come out to her family. She'd sat at their oak dining table, her hands shaking as she told them she was a lesbian, that she loved Lila, that she was divorcing Daniel. Her mother had cried, her father had nodded silently, and her brother Mark had squeezed her hand. "You're brave," they'd said. "We love you." She'd believed them. How could she have been so naive? Lila opened the door before Emma could knock, her dark hair spilling over a cream sweater, her eyes searching Emma's face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Lila said, pulling her inside. The apartment smelled of lavender and coffee, a sanctuary that felt too fragile tonight. Emma sank onto the couch, her hands still trembling. "They sold me out, Lila," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My family. They told Daniel everything for money." She pulled the letter from her pocket and handed it to Lila, who read it in silence, her expression shifting from confusion to fury. $7,000? Lila's voice was low, dangerous. "They put a price on you? On us." She tossed the letter onto the coffee table and knelt in front of Emma, taking her hands. "We'll figure this out. Together." Emma wanted to believe her, but the weight of betrayal pressed against her chest. Daniel wasn't just angry. He was vindictive. During their marriage, he'd controlled everything: her finances, her friends, her dreams. When she'd asked for a divorce, he'd screamed, thrown a glass against the wall, and swore she'd regret it. Now, with her family's betrayal, he had the ammunition to make good on that promise. "I don't know what he'll do," Emma said, her voice barely audible. "He knows where I live. He knows about you." Lila's jaw tightened, but her touch was gentle as she brushed a strand of hair from Emma's face. "Let him come. I'm not afraid of him, and you shouldn't be either. You're stronger than he ever gave you credit for. Emma's eyes met Lila's, and for a moment the world felt steady. Lila's courage was a lifeline, but Emma couldn't shake the fear that this was only the beginning. Daniel wasn't the type to let go. And her family, her own blood, had chosen money over her. The sting of that truth was almost as sharp as the love she felt for Lila. A love that had cost her everything and was now at risk. As the rain pounded against Lila's windows, Emma made a silent vow. She'd fight for this for them. But deep down she knew the storm was coming. And it wasn't just Daniel. It was the weight of a world that demanded she hide, and the family that had sold her out when she dared to be free. The next morning, Emma woke to the scent of coffee and the soft clatter of Lila in the kitchen. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the apartment, but the letter on the coffee table loomed like a shadow. Emma sat up, her body heavy with dread. She'd barely slept, her dreams haunted by Daniel's voice, her mother's handwriting, and the number $7,000 burning into her mind. Lila appeared with 2 mugs, her smile tentative but warm. Made your favorite black, no sugar like your soul, she teased, sitting beside Emma. Her humor was a lifeline, but Emma could see the worry in her eyes. Lila had stayed up late, researching Daniel's possible moves, checking locks, and even suggesting they call a lawyer. But Emma wasn't ready to face the legal system, not yet. She needed to understand why her family had done this. I have to go back, Emma said suddenly, her voice firm despite the fear clawing at her. To Tacoma. I need to confront them. Lila's brow furrowed. Emma, that's a bad idea. They betrayed you. What makes you think they'll tell you the truth now? Because I need to hear it from them, Emma said, her voice cracking. I need to know why they thought $7,000 was worth more than me. Lila sighed, setting her mug down. Okay, but I'm coming with you. No way you're facing them alone. Emma wanted to argue, to keep Lila safe from the mess of her past, but the thought of facing her family without her was unbearable. She nodded, and they spent the morning planning. Tacoma was only an hour's drive, but it felt like crossing into another world when Emma had fled to escape judgment. Now she was walking back into it, armed only with her pain and Lila's unwavering presence. The drive was quiet, the highway stretching through misty forests as Emma gripped the steering wheel. Lila reached over, her hand resting on Emma's thigh, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. When they pulled into her parents' driveway, the familiar White House felt foreign, its picket fence a mockery of the safety she'd once believed in. Her mother, Susan, answered the door, her face paling at the sight of Emma and Lila. Emma, what are you doing here? She asked, her voice tight. We need to talk, Emma said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her father, John, sat in the living room, his newspaper forgotten as he stood. Her brother, Mark, lingered by the stairs, his expression unreadable. Tell me why, Emma said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She pulled the letter from her pocket and held it up. Why did you sell my secrets to Daniel? For $7,000. Susan's eyes widened and John looked away, his jaw tight. Mark shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. The silence was suffocating, and Emma's heart pounded as she waited for an answer that might make sense of the betrayal. Finally, Susan spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We were trying to protect you, Emma. Daniel came to us, said you were throwing your life away. He offered the money to help us pay off the house. We thought it would keep him from hurting you. Emma laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the room. Protect me? You gave him everything he needed to destroy me. You told him about Lila, about where I live. Do you have any idea what he's capable of? John stepped forward, his face flushed. We didn't know he'd use it like this. We thought he just wanted closure. Closure. Emma's voice rose, her anger spilling over. He's been stalking me, Dad. He's been calling, showing up at my old job. And now he has this letter thanks to you. Lila's hand found Emma's, grounding her. You don't get to play innocent, Lila said, her voice calm but cutting. You sold her out. You put a price on her truth. Mark finally spoke, his voice low. It wasn't just the money, Emma. Mom and Dad. They're scared. The church, the community, they've been talking. They think you're a sinner. Daniel convinced them he could fix you. Emma's stomach churned. The word sinner hit like a slap. dragging her back to years of sermons and whispered judgments. She'd fought so hard to break free, to love Lila without shame. And yet, her family had chosen fear over her. "I trusted you," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I thought you loved me." "We do," Susan said, tears streaming down her face. "But we didn't know what to do. We thought we were saving you." Emma turned away, unable to look at them. Lila's arm wrapped around her, guiding her toward the door. "We're done here," Lila said, her voice firm. "Emma deserves better than this." As they drove back to Seattle, Emma's tears fell silently, each one a release of the pain she'd carried for years. Lila didn't push her to talk, just held her hand, letting the quiet stretch between them. Emma knew this wasn't the end. Daniel was still out there, and her family's betrayal had left scars that wouldn't heal easily. But with Lila beside her, she felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that love could be stronger than hate, even when the world tried to tear it apart. Back in Seattle, the city felt different, as if the rain carried a heavier weight. Emma and Lila returned to Lila's apartment, the letter now a constant presence in Emma's mind. She couldn't stop replaying her family's words, "Sinner, saving you," in the cold reality that they'd chosen Daniel's lies over her truth. But another fear loomed larger. Daniel was still out there, and the letter had given him a map to her life. Lila was practical, already searching for solutions. "We need a restraining order," she said, pacing the apartment with her laptop open. "And we need to change your locks, maybe even move you somewhere safer." Emma nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the image of Daniel's face, twisted with rage the night she told him about the divorce. He'd always been controlling, but there was something darker in him now, fueled by the letter and whatever twisted narrative her family had fed him. She felt exposed like a target in her own city. That night, they stayed up late, mapping out a plan. Lila called a lawyer friend, who agreed to help file for a restraining order. Emma contacted her landlord about new locks and started looking into temporary rentals. But even as they took these steps, Emma felt a growing unease. Daniel wasn't the type to be stopped by paperwork or locks. He'd always believed he owned her, and now with her family's betrayal, he had leverage. The next day, Emma went to her office, a small design studio in Capitol Hill. She tried to focus on her work, sketching logos for a new client, but her phone kept buzzing with unknown numbers. She ignored them, her heart racing each time the screen lit up. By noon, she couldn't take it anymore and left early, heading to a cafe to meet Lila. The cafe was crowded, filled with the hum of conversation and the clink of coffee cups. Lila was already there, her camera bag slung over a chair, her face lighting up when she saw Emma. "I got us a table by the window," she said, pulling Emma into a quick hug. For a moment, the world felt normal, and Emma let herself lean into Lila's warmth. But then she saw him. Across the street, Daniel stood under an awning, his eyes locked on her. He was taller than she remembered, his face harder, his stare unyielding. Emma froze, her breath catching as Lila followed her gaze. "Is that him?" Lila asked, her voice low. Emma nodded, unable to speak. Daniel didn't move, just watched, his presence a silent threat. Lila grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back of the cafe. "We're leaving. Now." They slipped out through a side door, hurrying down an alley to Lila's car. Emma's heart pounded as she glanced back, half expecting Daniel to be right behind them. But the alley was empty, and they made it to the car, driving back to Lila's apartment in tense silence. "He's not going to stop," Emma said finally, her voice trembling. "He knows too much. My family gave him everything, my address, my job, you." Lila's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Then we fight back. We get the restraining order, we document everything, and we make sure he knows he can't touch you." Emma wanted to believe it was that simple, but the fear was relentless. That night, they stayed at Lila's, the apartment locked up tight. Emma couldn't sleep, her mind racing with memories of Daniel's temper, his threats, the way he'd made her feel small. But Lila was there, her arms around Emma, whispering promises of safety and love. The next morning, they went to the courthouse to file the restraining order. The process was grueling, the questions invasive, but Lila stayed by Emma's side, her presence a steady anchor. When they left, the temporary order in hand, Emma felt a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. As they walked to their car, Emma's phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You can't run forever, Emma." She showed it to Lila, who cursed under her breath. "We're going to the police," Lila said, her voice firm. "This ends now." At the station, the officer took their statement, but his skepticism was palpable. "Ex-husbands can be messy," he said, shrugging. "But a text isn't much to go on." Emma's frustration boiled over, but Lila squeezed her hand, keeping her grounded. As they left the station, Emma's resolve hardened. She was done being a victim of Daniel, of her family, of a world that told her she didn't deserve to love who she loved. With Lila beside her, she felt a strength she hadn't known she had. But the message on her phone was a reminder that this fight was far from over, and the cost of her freedom was still rising. The days that followed were a blur of vigilance and fear. Emma and Lila moved into a temporary rental, a small apartment in Fremont with a view of the canal. It was meant to be a safe haven, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel was always one step behind. The restraining order was in place, but the texts kept coming short, cryptic messages from burner numbers that the police couldn't trace. "I see you. You'll always be mine." Each one was a dagger, reminding Emma that her past wasn't done with her. Lila threw herself into protecting Emma, researching security systems and reaching out to a private investigator. She was fierce, her love for Emma a force that refused to bend. But Emma saw the toll it was taking. Lila's sleepless nights, the way her hands trembled when she thought Emma wasn't looking. It broke Emma's heart to know she brought this storm into Lila's life. One evening, as they sat on the apartment's tiny balcony, Lila broke the silence. "I'm not going anywhere, you know," she said, her voice soft but firm. "No matter what he does, I'm here." Emma's throat tightened. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "This is my mess, Lila. You shouldn't have to deal with it." Lila turned to her, her eyes fierce. "Don't you dare say that. This isn't just your fight, it's ours. I love you, Emma, and that means I'm in this all the way." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks as she leaned into Lila, their foreheads touching. In that moment, the world felt small, just the two of them against the chaos. But the chaos was closing in. The next morning, Emma found a note slipped under their door. "You can't hide forever." No signature, but she knew it was Daniel. Lila called the police, but they were dismissive, citing lack of evidence. Frustrated, Emma decided to take matters into her own hands. She remembered a friend from her old life, Sarah, who worked in cybersecurity. Sarah had always been supportive, even when Emma was married to Daniel. If anyone could help track him, it was her. They met Sarah at a quiet diner, her laptop open as she listened to Emma's story. "He's using burner phones, probably prepaid," Sarah said, her fingers flying over the keys. "But people like Daniel slip up. Give me a few days and I'll see what I can find." As they waited for Sarah's results, Emma and Lila tried to reclaim pieces of their life. They went to art galleries, cooked dinner together, and stole quiet moments to dream of a future without fear. But the shadow of Daniel lingered, and Emma's family remained a painful absence. She hadn't spoken to them since Tacoma, and their silence was its own kind of betrayal. 3 days later, Sarah called with news. "I traced one of the numbers to a motel in Everett," she said. "He's been moving around, but I've got a partial IP address from a cafe he used." It's not enough for the police, but it's a start. Emma felt a surge of hope but also dread. Confronting Daniel directly was dangerous, but letting him control her life was worse. She and Lila devised a plan. They'd go to the motel not to confront him, but to gather evidence, photos, receipts, anything the police couldn't ignore. The drive to Everett was tense, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. The motel was run down, its neon sign flickering. Emma's heart raced as they parked across the street, watching for any sign of Daniel. After an hour, they saw him step out of a room, his phone to his ear, his movements agitated. Lila snapped photos with her camera, her hand steady despite the fear in her eyes. They were about to leave when Daniel looked up, his eyes locking on their car. Emma's breath caught as he started toward them, his face twisted with anger. Lila floored the gas, the tires screeching as they sped away. Emma's heart pounded, but they'd gotten what they needed. Proof he was close, proof he was real. Back at the apartment, they sent the photos to Sarah, who promised to pass them to a detective she trusted. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt a glimmer of control. But that night, as she lay in Lila's arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel was planning something bigger. The letter, the texts, the motel, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Emma feared the picture they'd form. The detective Sarah connected them with was a woman named Carter, whose no-nonsense demeanor gave Emma hope. She reviewed the photos and the texts, her expression grim. "This is enough to escalate the restraining order violation," she said. "But we need to catch him in the act. He's careful, and he's not breaking in or making direct threats we can pin down." Emma's stomach sank. "So what do we do? Wait for him to hurt us?" Carter leaned forward, her voice steady. "We set a trap. Controlled safe with police nearby. If he's as obsessed as you say, he'll take the bait." The plan was simple but terrifying. Emma would go to a public event, a local art fair where Lila was exhibiting her photography, and let Daniel see her. Undercover officers would be nearby, ready to intervene if he approached. Lila hated the idea, her protective instincts flaring, but Emma insisted. "I need this to end," she said. "For us." The art fair was crowded, the air filled with music and laughter. Emma walked through the stalls, her heart pounding, knowing Daniel could be anywhere. Lila stayed close, her camera a shield, her eyes scanning the crowd. Emma felt exposed, but she also felt alive, fueled by the love she'd found and the life she was fighting for. Then she saw him. Daniel stood near a food truck, his eyes locked on her. He didn't approach, just watched, his presence a silent threat. Emma's pulse raced, but she kept moving, trusting the police were nearby. Lila's hand brushed hers, a reminder that she wasn't alone. As the fair wound down, Daniel finally made his move. He approached Emma, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can just walk away? You're mine, Emma." Before she could respond, officers swarmed, pinning him to the ground. Emma's legs buckled and Lila caught her, holding her tight as Daniel was cuffed and led away. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Daniel was charged with violating the restraining order and stalking, his threats finally taken seriously. Emma and Lila returned to their apartment, exhausted but relieved. For the first time in months, Emma felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by a fragile hope. But the scars remained. Emma knew she'd never speak to her family again, their betrayal a wound that might never heal. Yet, as she sat with Lila, their hands entwined, she realized something profound. Family wasn't just blood. It was the people who fought for you, who chose you, who loved you without conditions. Months later, Emma and Lila stood in that same Seattle park from their first spark, the autumn leaves falling around them. Emma took Lila's hand, her voice steady. "I want to build a life with you," she said. "No more running. No more hiding." Lila smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "I'm all in, Emma. Always." As they kissed, the city hummed around them, a testament to their resilience. Emma had lost her family, her safety, her past, but she'd gained something greater. A love that was worth every fight, every tear, every moment of courage. And in that love, she found her true home. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.